All right, so both Andrew and Lauren had to drop out really kind of at the last minute this week, so it's just me. They're both okay. They should be back next week. So I had some stuff planned that we were going to do, and none of that is going to happen tonight. So this is going to be a little off the cuff, probably really short, and cover just a few things. But the first thing I'm going to cover is Damsel. Millie Bobby Brown plays the main character, Elodie. Angela Bassett plays her stepmother. Interestingly enough, not the wicked stepmother like in most fairy tales. She's actually a great, kind, and caring stepmother. And then the evil queen is played by Robin Wright. And that's sort of the end of the people that you would recognize as far as names go. Everybody else, well, I say you would know. That's it for characters that I recognize. If you're up on your current actors or actresses, you may recognize somebody that I don't recognize, but it's a pretty relatively unknown cast, I think. So the film opens up. We don't really know what's going on. We have a king, and he's in a cave and dealing with a dragon. And there's this whole standoff, and you see the king drive his sword into what we believe is the dragon, and then it cuts to about a century later, I think is what it says. So we come up on Elodie and her sister, and they're chopping wood in their little region of the countryside that's all burnt out. And it turns out their lands have been hit with this thing called the freeze. And so they're chopping down wood to survive. They're really running low on everything. And so when the opportunity comes to basically sell his daughter to the queen of this kingdom called Aura, he jumps at the chance. It's money. He's got two daughters, so he'll have the other one. He doesn't really think it through. And, he chooses to send her out there, and they invite, the kingdom of Aura invites Elodie and her sister and the king and his wife, who is Elodie's stepmother, out to the kingdom, and everything is beautiful. So that's the thing. One thing about this movie, everything is really beautiful and probably overly beautiful. It definitely has that sort of uncanny valley vibe where you can you can just barely tell that a lot of the landscapes are CGI or computer generated, and it just doesn't quite feel real. I don't know that everything ever created needs to be filmed in New Zealand like Lord of the Rings, but also I kind of think maybe every fantasy movie ever made should just be shot in New Zealand because it looks like a fantasy land and at least it's real. But that being said, everything has an unreal look to it, but it's good enough, right, for this movie. And that's, as I get into it, that's sort of this movie. This movie is good enough. It's not great. It's definitely problematic. So, we'll dive into that. But the gist of the story here is that she is being sold into this kingdom, and she is effectively a sacrifice for the dragon that lives in the cave on the hill. And the reason being is that when the king we saw in the beginning was battling the dragon, he survived and he made a deal with the dragon. And they have to throw these women down three every generation so that the dragon doesn't leave the cave and destroy their kingdom. And the requirement is that these three women they throw down have to be of royal blood. And so what they do is they have this marriage ceremony. Everything's great. Like she doesn't understand, she doesn't know that she's a sacrifice. She has a really sweet, like sort of almost meet cute with the prince. They go out and ride horses. They really connect with each other. They go and get married, and at the wedding, everything's great. He picks her up or I forget at what point in the wedding, but the queen cuts her hand and then cuts Elodie's hand and then touches them together. What we don't know at the time is they're mixing blood, right? So she's mixing her royal blood into Elodie's hands so that the dragon, when it smells blood, will smell royal blood. The whole wedding, everything seems like it's going really great. And it's at the top of this cave, which obviously isn't suspicious to anybody, right? They complete the ceremony and the prince lifts her up and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to carry you." And they get to the mouth of the cave. And he says, "Oh, I'm sorry." And then he throws her into the cave. And a lot of this stuff you can see in the trailer. So I know I said there would be spoilers, but a lot of this stuff is in the trailer. And to be fair, most of this movie is really predictable. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. So while she gets thrown into the cave, we then go on this adventure of her running from the dragon, voiced by the always awesome. and I'm going to butcher this, which is disappointing because I love this woman and she's in so much stuff, but it's Shore Agdashlu,
I am sorry, Agdaslu.
who has been in countless things, but she has a very, very unique, very raspy voice and perfect for a dragon. She's really great. Obviously, she she wants to eat this girl because she's of royal blood. And what we come to find out as the story goes on, in number one, Millie Bobby Brown, Elodie finds that the girls that have been thrown in over time have sort of drawn maps and things on the walls as they, were able to survive for a while but not escape. And so, of course, our character that we're following is the one that's going to get out. She has the most information, looking at the writing on the wall. A bunch of girls have survived. There's some funky situations where she can kind of commune with the dead for some reason that we don't really understand, but she can. We go through all that. She's avoiding the dragon, has her run-ins with the dragons or dragon, sorry. And through the story, we come to find out that what we saw in the beginning wasn't the whole truth. That the king that, looked like he was stabbing the dragon, in fact, wasn't stabbing the dragon, but instead he had three of his men in the cave, and what they came across were three dragon eggs. So his men murdered this dragon's three children, and they were the last three children she was ever going to have. So she was never going to be able to reproduce.
They said you set upon their village, that the king came only to defend his people.
He came unprovoked.
I know what they did. I know they killed your children.
They? You. Your kind. Your blood.
No!
My daughters were the last of my line, so I will take their daughters until my final breath.
Why they killed just the three and don't try and kill the dragon or anything like that isn't really explained. Instead, they kill her three babies, and instead of her going crazy and wanting to revenge everybody and going absolutely berserk, she makes a deal and says, "You have to give me three. For the three that you took, basically, you have to give me three every generation." Millie Bobby Brown's figuring that out. And we come to the part of the story that really bothered me the most, in that this is supposed to be a story turned on its ear where the damsel in distress doesn't need saving. But in fact, in this story, her dad, guilt ridden by finding out what happened and what he really traded his money for, brings a group of people to the cave to try and rescue his daughter. So it's not a prince coming to save the princess, but instead it's her dad. So this whole thing about it being a fairy tale on its ear doesn't quite play for me. Yes, she still escapes. Again, spoilers, but the dragon ultimately kills the people that the dad brought. Ultimately kills the dad. He says, "Oh, please forgive me for selling you," blah blah blah, and it seems like she kind of does. And in a way, like, I know what was going on, but the way it went down, he didn't really have time to explain anything. She didn't have time to understand anything. And it was just like, okay, it's cool that you sold me, Dad. Like, it was this weird, like, moment that, almost would have been better if when he was dying, she just said, "No, I don't," and let him die with kind of that on his conscience. I know that's not the story they're telling, but I mean, let's be real. This dude sold his daughter to be a human sacrifice. And whether he knew it or not doesn't matter. It's a dick move. And so the dad dies, these guys die. She manages to face off with the dragon. Oh no, that's right. So she was only the because she survived the dragon, and the for some reason the queen finds out, they take her sister now. And so after the dragon has killed Elodie's dad, killed all these people, they decide to have another ceremony where this dude is marrying the um the younger sister. And so we to the point where she throws her into the cave. And so Elodie, to save her, jumps in front of the dragon, pulls some super magical ninja shenanigans, and doesn't get herself burned to death because she stands in front of this curved wall. that when the dragon breathes fire and stabs it away, it throws the dragon's fire back in its own face, and it's certainly silly. And so the dragon's, basically defeated. The dragon's basically like, just kill me. And she says, no, I'm not going to kill you. This is what happened. These people have been lying to you this whole time. You haven't been getting royal blood. They've been, tainting the people they're throwing in with their own blood, so they seem like royal blood to appease the dragon. And so now we get to the end of the movie where this dude is Prince is once again marrying somebody new for like the third time in 3 days. And Elodie is just thrash. She's super beat up. Like in this picture, she looks pretty beat up. She's way more beat up by the end. She breaks into this castle, which is, glitz and glamour and all that stuff. And everybody, like nobody just attacks her. Like the guards don't, like how she got to this ceremony with nobody stopping her. Don't worry about it. She comes up to the ceremony and nobody drags her down. Not a big deal. Totally breaks up the wedding, tells the girl to run away. She runs away without any explanation. And then, they're like, well, we're gonna kill you, blah blah blah. And she's like, nah, dog, I got a dragon. And so now that she's teamed up with a dragon, it basically runs everybody out of town, and then it just kind of goes to the end where they're happy and running the kingdom, and the credits roll. And it's just action wise, it's a fun movie. Visually, it's a well done movie. The dragon's really cool looking. There's a lot of stuff that is pretty decent about it. But like I said, the real problem that I had with it was that it really wasn't what it advertised to be. I think if for her to have escaped, the idea of her using the information from the previous princesses that were thrown in there was great. It's this teamwork thing. If there had been a better mystical explanation for why she could commune with the dead and, work with them as a team, that would have been better too. But for the story they were trying to tell and for the way that they pumped it up, it should not have been her dad coming to save her and him being the real reason that, she got to escape. Yes, he dies, but he leaves a bunch of stuff behind that she can use. She's a distraction. He gets to say his piece and all that. And I think it's a missed opportunity because it kind of tarnishes what the whole point was. Yes, she saves the day. Yes, she's the strong one. Yes, she's not the damsel in distress. She's a badass. Why she's a badass, they don't really explain. She's just super dope. But I mean, it's okay. The movie itself, I mean, if I was rating it, it's a 5 or a 6 maybe. Like I said, the action's really awesome. On IMDb, it's a 6.2. On Rotten Tomatoes, as a 56 from the critics, a 66 from the audience. Split the middle, it's a 60, which to me rates out as a 6. So I mean, that's really where it sits. Anyways, that's Damsel. Like, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's probably a good movie for, young girls to see. Yes, the dad saves the day, but I mean, she really is a girl kicking ass and saving the day. Leave out the details, leave out the why she was a badass, and and it's probably okay. So give it a watch if you're looking for something with solid action. Don't go in expecting any amazing performances. This will not win any awards for sure. I don't think anybody on the acting side is great. I think Angela Bassett was probably the best actor in the thing, and she just didn't have a lot of screen time. For a hot minute in the beginning, you get the feeling that maybe she's the evil stepmom, and then she's great. Like she's like the nicest, most caring woman. And it even turns so you're turning the stepmom thing on its ear too. But it needed more work. I read some stuff that said there was a lot of rewrites during the filming, and they kind of changed some stuff, and they did some reshoots at the end. It's not quite a finished product, or not quite as good as it could have been, but not terrible either. So if you're just looking for something, like I said, some action and a cool dragon and great visuals, it's okay. So give it a watch if that's what you're into. If you're a huge Millie Bobby Brown fan for some reason, give it a watch. I mean, she's Millie Bobby Brown. She's great. She's fun, but it's not mind blowing. So next up, and then we'll probably talk about this a little bit next week with Lauren because I know she's seen it. But next up is the Holdovers. This has been in theaters. It is playing on Peacock right now. So if for some reason you have Peacock, whether it's your Comcast subscription or whatever, it's included. And so I definitely say give it a watch. This one is nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Performance by an Actor for Paul Giamatti, Best Performance by an Actress for Divine Joy Randolph, who won, and Best Original Screenplay and Best Achievement in Film Editing. So, you know, it this movie for me was excellent, and I can see why it's an Oscar nominee. I can see why it didn't quite win all these categories. And it's maybe not a perfect movie. It's it's a little slow in parts, but not too bad actually. Like it's not super fast paced, but it's not supposed to be. I kind of feel like when we were talking about American Fiction last week, in that, there was two parts to American Fiction where you had um definitely the satirical take on the race issue and all of that, but you also had this very human story about this man and the things that he was going through. And the Holdovers is, effectively that. It's the human story. Um there's no other agenda really in it, but it's a really interesting story. It's a good story. It takes place in the 70s. I think they're dealing with the fallout of the Vietnam War. I'm really bad about my wars, and I know they said it during the film, and I just can't remember which one it was. But it takes place at a all boys boarding school, and the it gets its name because it's called the Holdovers because most kids get to leave for the holidays with their family. If you've ever seen Harry Potter, this is what happens to Harry every damn year. But most people get to go home, go get to visit their families for the holidays, and the kids that get stuck behind are called the holdovers. Well, somehow Paul Giamatti's character gets hosed into being the teacher for these holdovers, and there's a handful of kids. It's like him and I think five kids, six kids, something like that. So he's responsible for taking care of them, and one of the only other people that's left behind is the cook that works there, played by Divine Joy Randolph. She really is great in this. I'd have to see the other nominees in that category. I don't know if she was the best one in this category, but she was really good. So, like, her winning doesn't, like, I don't want to diminish her winning. I think she deserves an award. Like I said, I don't know if she was the best. Her part was pretty flat, but there's a few things in there that were really impactful. So, we find out pretty early on that her son passed away in whatever war it was. And the reason that he was there is because she couldn't afford to send him to college. And so when they offered to pay him for with the GI Bill after he got back, he wanted to go because he was very intelligent. It turns out he went to this school with um, that Paul Giamatti's character teaches at. And so, as the story goes on, there, for reasons, these other four or five kids leave. So then we get stuck with this trio of holdovers, which is Paul Giamatti, Divine Joy Randolph, and this kid, Angus, played by Dominic Sessa, who I've not seen before. I think he does a pretty good job in this. Paul Giamatti's character is Mr. Hunnam, Paul Hunnam, and then Divine Joy Randolph is Mary Lamb. And so, like I said, we find out that her son died. So she's still recovering. She didn't want to leave because she felt that her son attended school there. And if she left for some reason, she'd be dishonoring his memory. And so the rest of the film, like I said, is them hanging out at the school and kind of, getting to know each other. There's no, at least for these three characters with each other, there's no funky romance or anything like that. Like you can definitely tell that Paul Giamatti's character, that Mr. Hunnam genuinely cares for Mary. There's a lot of time that he's concerned about her. He rips one kid a new asshole for not being more understanding about her situation and how sad she is because he's a rich white kid that just wants to go party with his family and can't, whereas this woman is a paid employee and should be, I don't know, in his eyes, just taking care of them and doing what she's told. And so when everybody else leaves, like I said, it just becomes these three, and the way that their relationships develop is really interesting and really fun. So Mr. Hunnam, Paul Giamatti's character, is he's like the anti Robin Williams in Dead Poet Society.
I can tell by your faces that many of you are shocked at the outcome. I, on the other hand, am not, because I have had the misfortune of teaching you this semester, and even with my ocular limitations, I witnessed firsthand your glazed, uncomprehending expressions.
Sir, I don't understand.
That's glaringly apparent.
No, I can't fail this class.
Oh, don't sell yourself short, Mr. Coates. I truly believe that you can.
I'm supposed to go to Cornell.
Unlikely.
He's not an inspirational teacher. He's not a kind teacher. He thinks all these kids are stupid. He's teaching ancient history. So, I mean, it's obviously it's probably a boring subject for most kids anyways. He doesn't really care if they pass or fail. Like he's super hard on the kids. And so, nobody really likes him. And this other kid, he's not a bad kid. The Dominic Sessa, the Angus Tully character, he's not a bad kid. He just doesn't really want to be there, and he gets totally spurned by his family because he thinks he's going on vacation for Christmas. He doesn't think he's staying behind, and then his parents are like, "Yeah, we got somewhere to be." And it turns out it's not his parents necessarily; it's his mom and her new husband. And when he's on the phone with them, the mom is like, "Oh, well, we never got our honeymoon, and so we just really want to have some time alone," and blah blah blah. And of course, he's furious about that because how dare she put this new man over him and the memory of his father. And so there's some twists and turns, especially with that relationship as the movie goes on. For this one, I don't want to spoil it because if you haven't seen it, there's a really good gut punch late in the movie, and I think it definitely it surprised me. I didn't know it was coming. There's some things that I thought were coming and sort of play out that way, but the real twist is well done. And so, I mean, this is just a movie about people and people getting to know each other and people helping each other become better people. And it's just there's not a lot to say about it without giving away the whole plot, more so than I already have. What's is interesting though is that it's a relatively long movie. It runs 2 hours, almost 15 minutes, but it doesn't play that way. It really it goes pretty quick. You don't feel like you're just sitting there bored, even though there are some points that are a little slower while they're developing characters and things like that. And the film itself does not really drag. And so I think, yeah, I think it's really, like I said, really good. It is a period piece. It takes place in, like I said, the 70s or whatever, but it doesn't hammer that into your face. That's just when it takes place. It's not all about, X, Y, and Z happening in the 70s. The war is the closest thing, and there's a bunch of kids, they at one point they show a wall where they show all these kids that have passed away from, um, fighting in the wars, over the years. There's kids that went there for World War One. There's kids that went there and then went into World War Two. There's kids that went there and went into Vietnam. So, they've lost a lot of students anyways, but the way that Mary's character has to deal with the loss of her son is really, it's sad, obviously, but it's really beautiful. Like she does a really good job in that part. Paul Giamatti's character dealing with all the things that he really is as a person. Like this kid being stuck with him who is a bit of a screw up, really kind of makes him face himself. And so there's a lot of self discovery there too. But really ultimately it's about three people that care about each other. They didn't really want to, and then they do, and it finishes really well. I think if you have access to it, either in the theater or on Peacock, I would say watch it for sure. It's really wonderful. I think if you have kids, it's pretty much kid friendly. There's a lot of profanity in it. I think it's rated R because of the F bomb. There's one scene where somebody opens a nudie magazine and there's some boobs, but other than that, there's no sex in the movie. So I think it's pretty accessible. You could pretty much watch it with anybody and really enjoy it. And I think it's ultimately a good lesson for a family to see. So if you're okay with the profanity, and again the one little flash of boobs in what amounts to a Playboy magazine, then you're okay. But I think it's a must see. I need to go through and watch the rest of the Oscar movies, Oscar nominated movies, and see which ones catch my eye. I'm not the guy that catches every single movie. Until somebody's going to pay me to do that, I'm not going to do that. Uh, but like I will see the ones that I really want to see, or at least the ones that I think might have an interesting angle on them. So like Damsel, I was pretty sure it wasn't going to be great, and I was okay with that because I thought it would make for an interesting topic. Of course, I thought I was going to have two more people to talk to about it. I thought I was going to have more people to talk to the holdovers about, but I didn't. I mean, that's really the gist of what I had this week. I want to be watching more, but like I said, shit, it might even be 2 episodes ago. But I've been playing Final Fantasy VII, and that has absolutely eaten up all of my time. I've fallen asleep playing a few times because I play late at night and I fall asleep. It's not a criticism of the game at all. So my hours are a little skewed. There's probably, I don't know, anywhere from 8 to 10 hours of the game where I fell asleep with a controller in my hand. So that doesn't count. But according to my save, I have roughly 91, 92 hours into this game already. So it's been sucking up my life. But it's a fantastic game. So if you're a gamer, I think I said before, if you're into the RPGs, it is a pretty amazing game. Great story, beautiful graphics, all of that stuff. And I think it's worth playing. It's worth the money. I think the story has developed now that I'm nearing the end. I only have, a couple chapters of the game left to go. It really works the characters they bring in and the way they work them through. Again, this is a remake of the old one, so all these classic characters are showing up now. You have Kate Sith, you have Vincent Valentine, all these characters that are a little weird, a little different show up. They do some stuff in this one that feel different than the original. Red 13 through the first half of the game seemed like, kind of an old man dog. For those that haven't played before, Red 13 is a dog. And, he's got this old man, wise old man voice. And then at some point it switches and you find out that he's really basically a teenager, and he just didn't want anybody to look down on him. So that's why he used this old man voice, which is kind of a funny thing. And we've just met Sid Highwind. Like there's a lot of stuff going on that if you've played the originals, this game is pretty great. I was talking to Andrew about it in the episode. We did talk about it. This one's not turn-based like the original. It's definitely an action, not quite a button mashing game, but you definitely have to pay attention to what you're doing, pay attention to your health bars and things like that, because there are actions that you can take that sort of stop the clock while you do them, but it's not turn-based like the original. Like in the original Final Fantasy VII, you could wait for your turn in a battle and then just kind of walk away and wait and then come back. I think I did that before. Like literally I was playing the game and I had to go to work or something. And so in the middle of a battle, I just left it on because there's no sleep settings back then. So I just left it on, came back like 6 hours later and finished my battle, and it was fine. But yeah, this one is it's visually stunning. There's some really cool ways that you can develop relationships with the characters, and they pay off throughout the game. They call it a romance system, but it's not like some of the other games where there's like a hardcore like story changing romance element. It's more like if you play it at kind of cements some things that people always thought from the first one, and that is, what the relationship is between Cloud and Aerith, and what his relationship is with Tifa. And who was the one that in those games he was kind of supposed to be with, right? And I know this sounds cheesy if you're not a gamer, it sounds corny, but this is stuff that has been part of the gaming zeitgeist for what, almost 30 years now. So, it is a big deal. It is a big deal to see them kind of put a little bit into this and let people see what they always intended to have done. So, if you're a gamer, play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Play the remake, which is the one before it, if you can. They go really well together, obviously. And yeah, I mean, that's really all I've got. By next week, I will have watched Shogun. Andrew will be back, so we'll talk about, I guess, what is it going to be, episodes 4 and 5, I think, of Shogun at this point. We'll talk probably about the Holdovers. I know Lauren watched a couple of things this week that she was going to talk about, and so she'll have a couple of things, and we'll see who else will show up. It'll probably just be the three of us. Yeah, this week is an interesting one. So on Amazon Prime, the new Roadhouse comes out with Jake Gyllenhaal. I don't know that I care about that one. It's coming out and it'll be there, and you can watch it if you have time. For me, I'm super excited. On the 20th, the new season of Top Chef comes out. I probably won't talk about that because it's a cooking show, and I don't know that it's super interesting to anybody else, but I think it is if you're into the cooking thing, it's a great show to watch. So give that a shot. If you're into the animated stuff on Disney Plus, the new X-Men 97 animated series drops on March 20th. So that will be right after this episode drops. I swear there was something else new that I really wanted to see, and I don't know what it is. The Three Body Problem. Three Body Problem drops on the 21st, I believe. And so that one I'm super excited for. So hopefully I'll watch that by the time we record next week. It's a series, and I think it's Netflix. So I don't know if it probably won't be weekly, but I doubt I'll have watched the entire thing by the time we record. But hopefully enough to give at least an initial impression on. So look for all that next week. And with that, I will say thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If I can figure out my problems with the website and actually get the audio uploaded, for once, finally, it's not my fault. I really did try last week. So hopefully we'll make progress there. And have an awesome week, and we'll see you next time.